Hi and welcome back to the channel. Now today I would like to talk about something that is a key principle in this whole Trinity process, and it's really something that has been there all along. It's always been with us really, but it's been appearing throughout history in ancient texts. And can I say that word, texts? It's a good word, isn't it? So it's been appearing in ancient texts for millennia, and really it also appears in the Bible. I'm going to read this to you. It says, God, I don't even know what verse it's from now. I should do, shouldn't I really? Go and tell my servant David, thus says the Lord, would you build me a house to dwell in? And in other texts, it's kind of like the whole ethos of this is really, build me a house and I will dwell in it. And of course, you know, me is referring to God in this instance, the radiance, the essence of being, all that is energy, vitas, intelligence, the intelligence that is the vitas that animates this whole thing. So we're given the clue really very, very early on that this is the game that we need to play. This is what we're really up to here. And how we do that is really a marker of how we move through life, how we address our experience and bring our experience to life. So really, if we start to look at this, you know, build me a house and I will dwell in it. Now, if you really look and you kind of see that not everyone is blessed with the same quality of building materials. So some people come in and they have certain things they have to deal with. And we can say, like in shamanic terms, you know, there's two books you come into life with. And there's the book that you're given, that's your DNA, your ancestral heritage, all of these things, the culture that you're born into. And whichever way you believe this, we seem to have no awareness prior to that. Now, many people do, and over time, as you move into this Trinity process, you will gain greater understanding and greater ability to track back through time, this illusion of time, and to actually communicate with that ancestral past and bring forth the things that you need to and heal the things that you need to. But most people don't have a conscious experience of how they got here, really. So it's where did I come from? And then the other question is where am I going? But we'll address the idea of the build me a house and I will dwell in it. So go forth and build me a house. Now, with the building materials, some people are blessed when they come in. Like we say, there's the two books that you come into in shamanic terms. There's the book that you're given when you come in, and then there's the book that you write yourself. So in many ways, this is in scientific terms, is called epigenetics. So it's what you do with the building materials or the actual structural thing that you're given when you come into, and also the mental, emotional and spiritual building materials that you're given when you arrive on this earth. Now, as we know, those building materials can be used alchemically. So it's not an ordinary building, this. It's an extraordinary building. It's a building it's a living building. And it's a building made of life. And you are the building made of life. And then further beyond that, you have the environment in which you create. But primarily that message of build me a house and I will dwell in it is about how we orientate and create ourselves in this reality, in this world, in order to welcome in the radiance, welcome in God into this home that we are creating and have created. Now, of course, up to a certain age, we have no ability to consciously create that. And then there comes a time when we have the faculties in order to realize that this is important. It's important to create a real dwelling for energy to inhabit and travel and enjoy the process of living in and creating in. So if you look carefully, this always kind of makes me laugh in a way, because I remember when we lived in Bali, there was a lot of influences in Bali, and they're all telling people how to kind of, how to have this incredible physiques and all of these kind of things. And, only breathe there, don't worry, only breathe there, all these kind of things. And these people often looked like, amazing gods and goddesses. So they were blessed with this incredible genetics that they came into. And, they're telling people like me that sort of grew up in East London, and the majority of, I didn't, my family, my dad was Italian, so we had wonderful food in the house, but the majority of people that I grew up with around me were eating, I don't know whether you have this in America or abroad, but this like white bleached mother's pride bread and stuff like that. So the culture, I didn't come, a lot of these people had these kind of incredibly enlightened parents, and then they were fed all this incredible bioactive food and stuff like that. And it's quite funny for me, sometimes I would go and listen to these talks, and I would have to laugh, because it's like, for me personally, I didn't start off with very great building materials. I had all kinds of things going on in my childhood. I had loads and loads of allergies after a certain procedures, which begin with V. And, really, like I said, lots of problems with my teeth. I had a propensity to put on weight very easily, all these kind of things. And that's with the book that I kind of came into. And then obviously the process unfolds of the book that I'm writing, which is part of this whole Trinity process, which is this Trinity process. So really you kind of look at that and you say, okay, I've got this to work with, and wherever you are at now, that's what you've got to work with. That's the dwelling that you are creating for God, energy, radiance to inhabit, to co-inhabit with you. And we'll come on to that a little bit. Now, at this point, it's really important to look and see what kind of state of repair your house is in. And many people don't realize that, they're given this incredible opportunity to build something. Now, the alchemy, like I said before, is when you don't necessarily start off with the best building materials, but you actually find a way to turn those materials into something amazing, something that you can really build an incredible home, an incredible structure, an incredible inner atmosphere, an incredible inner sense, like a sanctum for God, energy, radiance to dwell in. And once you start to look at it this way, it really does start to change the game and open things up for you. Now, really, the other thing to look at is that, how many unwelcome guests have been living in your house. So if your house isn't in the best state of repair. Now, sometimes, like I said before, going back and forth with this, some of the people that start off with the very best building materials allow their house to fall into disrepair. And so often the people that don't start off with the very best materials have to make more effort from the get-go. And this can be a very good thing, because it means that you are tuned in more, you're more receptive to things that are going to allow you to create better experiences to have in this home. So really it's time to look and say, this home, this dwelling point, how welcoming is it for God? How welcoming is it for radiance? How welcoming is it for this essence of aliveness? Like some people, you go and I don't know whether you've had this experience or not, but I often have. And it probably is growing up in East London. So you would go and knock on someone's door and they would open the door and like immediately the door's like half shut, and you know there's no way they're going to let you in, and they keep you on the doorstep and they almost don't want you to see in. And it's because the house is in a complete pickle. The house is just in disarray. There's clothes everywhere, there's stains on the carpet, there's washing up, piles of washing up, everything's untidy. There's this sense of like this odorous, malodorous kind of atmosphere in the house. So, you know, it's just understanding that when you come to your house, when you come to your dwelling, what is it in, what kind of state is it in now? Do you want to welcome that aliveness in? Is it set up for this? Now, when I'm talking about unwelcome guests, now, if you walk around your house, your home, your dwelling, your temple, you could even call it. That becomes a bit more exalted, doesn't it? Let's call it a home for now. The dwelling in which you want to welcome aliveness into. Now, is that dwelling, is there light in that dwelling? This is how you do this, how you make a beautiful home. So you maximize the creativity. Have you got beauty? Is there a sense of beauty that would welcome someone in? Is there a sense of aliveness? Like, have you got the windows open or are the curtains drawn? So the first thing to do is to open the curtains, let the light in. And the best way to let the light in is to realize where there is no light. So if you take your body and your mind as the metaphor, you know, where are there this sense of darkness in the body, this sense of there is no illumination? So you can start to begin to do this, to scan through your body, just go through your mind as well, and see where there's these dark corners. Where is there something that is not welcoming in the light? And we'll get on to how you deal with that. But the other side of all of this is that if you were to look at your house, are the cupboards and the closets and the drawers, are they full of things? Are they full of regrets? Are they full of anxieties? Are they full of the past? How many skeletons are in your cupboards? You know, so you start to have to really get in and question this. You know, is your house allowing unwelcome interlopers, gate crashers, who may have gate crashed when you were a child and they've been living rent-free all this time in your home, the sacred home? And how's God going to turn up there when it's completely crowded with complaints? So complaints are having a party in every room, and they're just trashing the place. So there's complaints everywhere. And I'm not telling you about this because it's the same for everyone pretty much. And one of the most powerful practices that I undertook, this was when I was living in Bali, it really came to me about this, and there was actually someone who traveled to Bali from the United States who was giving a talk about complaints and setting up a 21-day complaint-free challenge. And this was incredibly, you know, from my perspective back then, I was thinking, oh, you know, this is simple. I can just not complain for 21 days. Oh my goodness. When you start to embark on this practice, you will discover how we are conditioned, we are augmented to live through complaints. Our cultural narrative is built on complaints often. And it's very difficult to actually see this for yourself because they are proper interlopers. So complaints crop up. They will seem like guests that seem okay, and it's okay. You think, oh yeah, they're pretty good. They're taking care of the place. But as soon as you go out the room, they are throwing things around. They're chucking things on the red wine on the carpet. They are absolutely the worst house guests you could possibly have. And it's important to become aware of where we are living the complaint. We become the complaints. And all of these things impact on the quality of the home and become a place that isn't welcome for that radiance, isn't welcome for aliveness, isn't welcome for energy. So this whole game, no matter how much we take in ionic vitamins and all of these different things, that we eat wonderful organic food. Yeah, so that's great. I mean, all of that's fantastic. But if it's entering a home where it immediately just gets pushed to the back of the room and never gets really consumed, never really gets integrated, isn't poured into the system, because there's all these other things going on that literally cancel out that goodness that you're trying to take in. So the first place is to understand that you are creating a dwelling for aliveness, energy, God to inhabit. And for many of us, our temples, our homes, I've already taken us up to the temple. Our homes, parts of our homes are actually on fire. So it's even worse. So you could say that on the physiological level, there's tons of inflammation. So there's parts of the house that are actually on fire. And I've had this so many times. Huge amounts of inflammation. And then, like I said, these emotional guests that we're allowing it to live rent-free. These same old patterns, these same old complaints, these regrets, this shame, and all of these things are interlopers, unwelcome guests, not paying rent. So what you really want, if you want a guest there, you want a guest that really pays, top dollar rent to be in your dwelling. So you start to understand how this whole process unfolds, and it begins really with an inner game, and the inner game then reflects to the outer game. So this reality, this world, is a mirror. It's a mirror of what goes on in here. It mirrors back to us. And it doesn't always mirror back to us in easy to understand ways, but it certainly mirrors back to us when we're in discomfort and we're in pain and we're experiencing fear and anxiety. All of these things are mirrors to show us what's going on in our home. So there's things to realize here, and I'm just trying to keep myself on point. Yeah, so the things that we talked about in the last video, which was the breath. So how do you start to clear out these unwelcome guests from the house, from your home? Well, of course, you open up the doors, you open up the windows, it's a process of opening. So even like posture is part of that process of opening. So making sure that your posture is an open posture, you have an openness about you. Yeah, you practice opening all of your body. So really also things like yoga. So yoga really, it wasn't to get a six-pack. It was really about making the body strong in order that you could meditate for longer. So when we understand that these things came along really to make our dwelling as inviting and as welcoming as possible. So you begin to understand that the thoughts that you welcome in, or the thoughts that you pay attention to, we're looking to beautify this thing, to bring creativity, to bring art, to bring out, to turn our dwelling into a piece of beautiful art that is full of this radiance that allows the other side of the radiance, the inner radiance, allows the outer radiance, or the greater radiance, you could say, to come and meet it and cohabit with it, to realize that they're one and the same thing. So to begin with, it's great to understand that if you really pay attention, if you really just pay attention for a period of time, and you just sit quietly, very quietly, and you close your eyes and you go inside, and you will discover that there is this sense of radiance at what it's like to be you. And I'm not saying what it's like to be these complaints, these regrets and all of these things. What it is like, the actual experience of you. There is an actual experience of you prior to all of these other things that are coming in and interloping in your dwelling. Now, once you locate that, and you don't have to make this a real strain to do that. It's who you are. It's there. It's already present. So once you locate that, you will notice very shortly, maybe not straight away, but you will notice that what it's like to be you is a kind of radiance. And there is this radiance sitting right at your core. It's the core of your being. And what you can do with this, you can locate it and you can start to expand it and start to fill your home, your dwelling, with this light, the inner light. So just as we would turn a light on inside our home, you have a light that you can switch on and you can turn up, like a dimmer switch. You can turn up that internal light. And as that light comes on more and grows, it will start to push out. It will make it uncomfortable for these interlopers. It will make it an uncomfortable place. It's too light. You know, have you ever been to a party where someone comes in in the throes of the party and switches the lights on? It's kind of like that's the signal, the party's over. Enough said, enough done, it's done. Everyone's home, go, go, go. So this is what that inner light does. It says that the time for these things to dwell rent-free in your home is over. And you don't need to go through all of the agonizing conversations about why they should stay, or why actually they are your friend after all, and they're helping you, and they're making your home a better place. But they're not, of course, you know they're not. So you don't need to go through all those conversations. The first thing is to expand this light. Air and light. The breath, like we were saying, you breathe out the things you don't want. So you start to breathe these things out. You breathe out these regrets. And this light pushes them out from the inside. It's like getting rid of parasites. And we'll come on to that in another video. But this light, you see, very pragmatic people sort of go blank when I talk about this. They don't really understand that we are energy, we are light. And some people, I read a while back, you know, it's like we are kind of frozen light. Yeah, and if you look at many scientists now, amazing scientists, that are realizing, coming more towards the idea of idealism in philosophy, the idea that consciousness is primary. And some even go as far as to say, that go back to almost the animistic, shamanic view of it, you know, which is panpsychism, which is the fact that everything has some degree of consciousness, even a piece of paper or a cushion or a rock or whatever. It's all made of consciousness. So once you understand this and you really take this on, this inner light will start to flood your body. And you do this as a practice. You take this on. And it's something that you can really start to enjoy. So it's this thing of, as you do this, those unwelcome guests, that your dwelling will become less and less inviting for them to stay. And you will shed light on them. It's like if you ever traveled somewhere where it's not such a great place to travel, many parts of the world, and you go into the room, you know, there's been many times where I've traveled somewhere and I've had to go and kind of like sleep somewhere and rent some crummy room. And, you know, I've been shown into the room and I put the light on and all these things just scamper for the skirting board. They hate the light. All these roaches and whatever it is, spiders, goodness knows what else, all scampering for the corners of the room to get away from the light. So this inner radiance, people don't realize it's actually there all the time. It's right under our nose. And the idea of this saying, you know, go and tell my servant David, thus says the Lord, would you build me a house to dwell in? Build me a house and I will dwell in it. It's very simple. It's always been there. And it makes sense. Of course it does. It makes sense. So you start by making your home unwelcome for these guests. And that light in itself will start to enable you to literally beautify your home. So you will notice that thoughts that are guided thoughts, that thoughts that come from what I call the guiding principle, have a different quality about them. The thoughts that are just that constant drone of complaints and anxiety, worry about the future, worry about the past, regrets, all of these things, you'll notice they have a kind of dullness about them. They lack exuberance. They lack this sense of illumination. We even say when we get a great idea, you know, it's an illumination. It's light. So we will notice that the thoughts that are going to help us along our way are illuminated. You know, light attracts light. So we're opening the windows. So we're stretching, we're opening our body physically. So you make sure that you move, like movement. You want the movement and flow of air and light through your dwelling. You open the curtains, which means you start to address the things that are making your home unwelcoming for God. And you take it on. And you start to realize that once this inner light starts to force these things out, and you'll notice that these complaints start to move towards the edge of the walls, and then eventually they're pushed out through the doors, walls, and you open the drawers, you open the cupboards, you let the light go into those areas. So, you know, this intense psychological process of endlessly, you know, it's kind of like the attempt to get out of the dilemma is the dilemma. And when I talk about the command, the survival, the imperative to survive at any cost, all attempts to get out of it are it. It loves all these deep psychological attempts to get out of it. You know, that is its food and drink. And we unwittingly take ourselves to be it. all the time. It never allows us to touch this inner radiance, this inner sense of aliveness, this being of radiance that is residing in us. It's God is already residing in. We just want more of God. We want to allow more. And God will come in infinitely. There is no, and as we allow more of this aliveness in, we place a welcome mat outside. We open the door. We invite this in through the way we rebuild and restructure. So this is the process. So most of us will be in the process of rebuilding. And we need help with that. And the more we open up and allow the light, the outer light and the inner light to unite, you will discover that there's an imperative and a guidance to rebuild this dwelling and to rebuild it in a different way. Like I said, it's a living structure. It's a living thing. It's a living, happening dwelling. And you could say it's a dynamic living system. And the command that we're born into is a dead, closed system. So all of these things that we can take on, if we work with this metaphor, and then we can expand that metaphor once we understand that this inner radiance invites in more of the outer radiance, the greater radiance, and they join and unite. And normally in the heart area, this is where this unification takes place and then spreads out through the rest. And this is when we notice that people that have a welcoming, inviting dwelling attract more opportunities. They invite welcome guests, guests that enhance and add something wonderful to their home. Guests that bring gifts, beautiful gifts into their home to help make that home a more inviting, invigorating, a place where people want to hang out. But you see, here's the thing. You don't just let anyone in. So when your home is beautiful and it has this real sense of energy around it and in it, then you could say, then you adventure out and it start to create the garden around it. Your environment, your home, you start to have this relationship with environment. Everything is an environment. You know, the body is an environment. The vision is an environment, the sound. So then you start to say, well, what sounds do I allow into my dwelling? And the sounds I speak, you know, what you say. Is it the interlopers that are screaming out of my mouth? Or is it the inner radiance that's coming out of my mouth? So we start to look at how our lives in a different way. We start to address things in a more alive, invigorated, and powerful way. So if you've ever read David Hawkins' Power versus Force, you understand that the force element takes huge amounts of energy. It robs us of energy. You know, whereas power is love. In a sense, power is effortless. And when we start to understand that when our dwelling is filled with light, filled with God, you know, God will come to us as a guest in our dwelling in all kinds of different ways. So it will be, God will arrive in our place on our doorstep with the gift of joy. God will arrive on our doorstep with the gift of power and a sense of purpose. God will arrive on our doorstep with a sense of meaning, gifting us a sense of meaning. God will arrive with a sense of vision, a vision that we want to create. God will arrive with a sense of innovation and creativity and allow us to be more creative in how we show up in the world. And this is really about being more of who you really are. And you kind of come to the conclusion that, like I have, that in the years I have left, this is the game. So all of the things that are going on out in the world, all of the distractions, all of the things that would bring us down and bring us to draw the curtains and shut the windows, close the doors, and allow all of those things to squeeze in through the floorboards, all those complaints and all of those regrets and all of those fears and all of those anxieties and all of those ways in which we don't take care of our home, that we allow all of those things to come back in and we stay safe in our unwelcoming little home. Now, really the truth of all of this is, and it's not a pleasant truth if we want to look at it. Yeah, I'm not saying, like, in a way, this whole thing's very simple, but it's not easy. We have to apply ourselves to it. Now, my grandmother used to say something interesting. She used to say when, as you get older and older and older and older, you end up getting invited to more and more funerals. It's just one of those things, I guess, that happens. So every time she came home from a funeral, this is probably when she was in her late 80s and early 90s, and she would say to me, I'd go and see her, and she said, "Oh, they went back unopened." And I said to her, "What do you mean by that? They went back unopened?" She said, "Oh, they didn't do anything with their life. They went back unopened." And that really used to sit with me. I was like, they went back unopened. And then one of her friends said, "Oh, no, that means that they'd never had sex." I was like, what? But actually, I hadn't read it that way. And I kind of read it in a way that they hadn't given everything. They took something. They thought there was something to take over with them. Yeah. So this isn't, in a way, this is like, how do we not go back to providence unopened, unexpressed, unlived? Like there was something saved. What are we saving this for? Why are we saving this? What's the payoff for saving this? To go to our graves with loads left to give, to leave this realm that we find ourselves in, this being that we find ourselves as, to hold back as much as possible. For what? What's the payoff for that? The payoff for that is that we've survived all our lives. But at what cost, at what price have we survived? So in making your dwelling, your home, a place that is filled with light and filled with these gifts that God delivers to you as he comes over or she comes over, it, whatever you want to call it, as this radiance stands on the doorstep and says, "Oh, can I come in? And here's a gift." And even the gift of realizing where you're at and what's going on and what needs attention. So it becomes this thing of beautifying and enhancing and creating a welcoming, beautiful home for that radiance to dwell in. And also realizing that your home, you in your home, the presence of you is that radiance too. And it's never been allowed to be really fully lived, fully expressed, fully given. So we're all afraid to give. We're taught to be afraid to give. Oh, if you give, people will take advantage of you. Yes, of course. But many, 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 many more won't. So this is how we give everything. So we go back completely used. We arrive back in that radiance, which is what we are anyway. There is no death. But we arrive back like it's an open, It's like that thing where we start off as old and we end up as an orgasm. And Osho would say that, we do that anyway. We end up as an orgasm. And I really like that metaphor. So the orgasm is when you've given everything. You've given everything to life. And you haven't held back. Because there's no payoff for holding back. It's not worth anything. So if you were to live fully expressed, self-expressed, to express the fullest aspect of your essence, what would be going on? Now, the first place that would be going on is that you would make the dwelling a place that you really invited God in with all of these gifts. So we have the gifts of, like I said, the fitness and the health and that sense of aliveness in the body of an athlete. Yeah, we have the creativity and we have the innovation and this real sense of artistry of an artist. And then we have the consciousness, this expansive consciousness, this ability to engage with life in a very intimate and deep and meaningful way as a mystic. The Trinity. This is the home of the Trinity. So if you take anything away from this video, it would be to just start to look at your home. Start to get clear about the building materials you have and where you need to open up the windows, where you need to allow this light to come in. Use this light that's in you, this inner radiance. It's there always present. It never goes away. Even death doesn't take that away. So begin to work this way. Whatever exercise, whatever diet you do, whatever all these things, if we haven't got this fundamental way of looking at it, this context, this enriching context, if this isn't present, then all of the other things will become kind of almost, I wouldn't say robotic, but it's like we're just going through the motions. They won't deliver the aliveness that we really want, that we really desire. Because if you look and you understand that if there's a desire there for something, it means that it is real. It has a reality. Why would we have a desire? And we all have a desire for aliveness. We want to be as alive and vital and radiant as possible. So let's embark on this. Let's look at how we can make our dwellings somewhere that God would love to come and cross the threshold and dwell in this sense of being. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. And please like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share the video. And I wish you a really wonderful time wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next video.